Let me tell you guys about BellyUpSports. BellyUpSports is the internet sports bar. Go ahead and check out their website, www.bellyupsports.com, to read some great articles from great writers all across the country, from hockey, baseball, golf, soccer, you name it. BellyUpSports is the premier, not your average website. The hearing for Manchester City is underway. They are hit with 115 charges of all having to do with their finances, like how they've been dealing with how they have been sharing their financial information. Um, it's one that a lot of fans have complained about when it comes to Man City. Man City in general is just having a lot of attention towards them this at least recently right now. But obviously the big one is obviously the 115 charges that they're currently on trial for. Um, no one's entirely sure what's going to happen if they're found guilty for those 115 charges. I know some are saying potentially that points will be deducted from the seasons that they were found guilty of, which means that could potentially change over titles. If we're talking about some seasons, because I believe uh, Liverpool would probably have won a few of those titles. Um, I don't know. I think someone said Manchester United potentially could probably have won a English Premier League title now. If I think the one of those seasons involved Manchester United. But yeah, it's been a really interesting series of events that has led up to it. Obviously, whenever we talk about financial fair play in this podcast, we always talk about how there's other leagues that are doing it even more egregiously. I know Juventus got hit pretty hard with it recently, but I mean, if you look at the other big clubs as well, you could see some shystiness as well as with what they're doing. Manchester City has been one of the bigger culprits, and I think also another thing that we've done a lot in this podcast is we called the bullshit on Manchester City, right? Because the Manchester City group, they have affiliates with a lot of clubs across the world, including New York City FC, uh, Girona, obviously, just to name a few. But even them doing the transfers that they do amongst that group. Uh, Prime example is Savio. Savio, who was a standout for Girona last year. Uh, they got him for honestly a very less than what his projected market value was according to Transfer Market. And you kind of get irritated by Man City, and I mean, like, should I? Can I say anything? Being that I'm a Madrista, yes, I can, because like, say, I mean, yes, say what you want, but like last year, Real Madrid's biggest signing was Jude Bellingham. One signing. It was one player that they had like one significantly large player. I mean, yes, they got I believe that year they had Fran Garcia was brought in, but he wasn't necessarily expensive, which he, obviously was rotating in and out with the squad as a starter. Um, I don't remember. I don't think Brahim Diaz. I think Brahim Diaz was already on the roster, but someone could throw Brahim Diaz in there. Uh, but at the same time, like, it's not like Real Madrid has been going. It hasn't been like the days of Los Galacticos where they go and buy a shit ton of players in one. It was like not like when they went and got Ronaldo, Kaká, Benzema, Raúl Albiol, Raúl Arebola, like Arbeloa. It's Xabi Alonso. Like, it's not like that. Like, Real Madrid doesn't do stuff like that. Hasn't done that in a while. Yes, they'll go and get one big marquee signing, obviously a Gareth Bale, um, Luka Modric. Even though Luka Modric was probably not that expensive, but Tony Cruz going in after Angel Di Maria, going after James Rodriguez. But it's always like one or two players that they go after. It's not like they go and do this huge summer of spending. So I mean, I guess I can kind of talk on it, but at the same time, I'm not, because obviously people are gonna just say, "Well, you're a Madrista" and all that shit. But anyways, but Man City, obviously, a lot of people have had complaints about Manchester City, and yeah, man. I mean, you know, they're they're having their day in court. I know innocent until proven guilty, But I think if you're not a City fan, you're definitely hoping for this because, like, I'll be honest, man, there's like a lot of City fans, bro. A lot of City fans that are on their high horse. They don't want to speak the reality that this club was bought. These titles were bought. And I mean that's kind of how it is in general. You buy your titles, yes. You go after the world's best players and you're gonna, more than likely win. You know, that's and I mean, what was that starting the way out like that for Manchester City? No, obviously, the first couple years, it didn't pan out that way. It wasn't until they finally got their real group of core players that were also world class, but at the same time, uh, bought into to what Man City was doing. That's when you start seeing the success. And obviously, once you added Pep Guardiola into the mix, made it one of the juggernauts of the Premier League. Um, but yeah, no, it's just one of those things where you see what's going on with the club, and you call the bullshit on it, right? You're bugged by it, what Manchester City is doing. Um, and like I said, as a Madrista, I usually try my best not to say much because of the fact that like it's like we're kind of doing the same thing. But the only difference at least for me, is that you know Manchester City has been dominant in their league, whereas Real Madrid, one year they win La Liga, one year they don't. It's just kind of how they are. Yeah, they win Champions League, but at the same time, like I said, it's a either or kind of thing. But Manchester City, with the dominance that they've had over the spread of time over in the Premier League, which many people view Premier League as the best league in the world. I've argued that I'm still standing for La Liga, but to be saying that, seeing what Manchester City's done, and I will argue why some people might prefer La Liga is probably because there's a lot more bigger name clubs in the Premier League. Obviously, when you look at the big six, if you will, so you would figure if you have a big six, there should be at least like multiple champions in a span of time. But really, it's been Manchester City. Um, do I think Manchester City is going to be found guilty? I think the other thing that people were hoping here is that Manchester City gets relegated next season, which I don't know. I don't know. I can't see them doing that for Man City because I think the popularity of Manchester City is pretty high right now, where there is a lot of Manchester City fans. Whether you want to call them plastic or not, man, there has been a lot of excitement towards Man City. Obviously, you got Erling Haaland in the team now. Um, Rodri potentially the Ballon d'Or winner. Uh, a very loaded team, stacked all throughout every position. You could say is a very stacked team. Um, and a lot of world-class players, a lot of popular players. And yes, there is, Manchester City is, maybe a few years ago, you're not gonna find a Manchester City fan, but now, yeah, you're gonna see a lot of Man City kids. I know for a fact because back when I went to college, um, here at Texas, when I went to Texas Southern University, people were rocking Man City kids. As a matter of fact, I remember watching the documentary on the University of Miami. There was a player wearing a Manchester City kit in the documentary. So it is something that needs to be talked about. But I mean, at the same time, like I don't like the thing is with Manchester City fans, and I totally get it. You guys don't like believing that your championships were bought, but I mean, look where you were before y'all had the money, and look where you guys are at now. I think that there is something to be said. I think there is something that needs to be looked into. Um, how you've been able to, go after players, and I've said it plenty of times. Financial fair play is just a huge joke. There's no real enforcement of this. I mean, now it seems like there might be some enforcement. I think Manchester City might be the team that has to fall on the sword and be dealt with the punishment. Because nobody learned from Juventus. Juventus got a 15-point deduction, which some people may say may have been a slap on the wrist. I mean, yes, they missed out on Champions League, but they were still in some European competition. Uh, but literally no one learned from it. Like there's still teams that are going after going and buying players uh without hitting the criteria of financial fair play. So that's where I'm kind of like where financial fair play is just one massive joke. And there's plenty of teams that could have been punished for financial fair play. PSG could be punished for financial fair play. Chelsea, I'm not gonna lie, probably or should be looked at for financial fair play, even though it hasn't really worked out for them. But still, like there's teams do it, right? And there has never been repercussions for it. And so I think how this all ends up for Manchester City is going to be interesting because of the fact that this is going to set a precedence for all of football to understand now that financial fair play will be something that everyone's going to have to consider now when they go in after players and do transfers. And I mean, this is coming off of, despite, in my opinion, one of the driest transfer windows. Um, and I think that that might have been the sign, right? Like, I mean, there wasn't that many like big blockbuster signings in this transfer window. Maybe it could have been the fact that there was just too many competitions going on that it was hard to conduct business with players while they're focused on their international duties. But I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, it's insane how all this has impacted in some sense. What at least if all this has an impact on what's going on with Manchester City, do I think Manchester City is going to get hit with a relegation? No. Do I see them getting points deducted on the years uh the years that were mainly affected by what some of their business was conducted? Probably. Do I see them giving championship titles to teams that deserved it? I think if the point deduction is enough for it to happen, maybe, but they have to do something big, right? And I mean, yeah, they could probably do transfer bans, but at the same time, like we saw Barcelona get hit with transfer bans, and then they lifted the transfer ban for them just so they can sign Neymar. And we know how fucking terrible that deal ended up being for Barcelona. Not necessarily with the success that came from Neymar, but all the financial struggles that now Barcelona has because of that deal. Um, yeah, it's gonna be interesting, right? It's gonna be interesting how this all rolls into how business is gonna be conducted from here on out. If, in my opinion, they should have been punished a long time ago. Teams need to be honestly, clubs need to be held more accountable with how they handle with business. I'm not disagreeing with that. Even I think that there's some shiestiness in general amongst other clubs, and I'll throw my club in there as well. Real Madrid, as well, have been known for just buying guys, you know, buying players and all that. Do I think that they have violated anything? No, because I'll be honest with you, like they don't make big signings like that very often anymore. Like I said, last one was Jude Bellingham. Yes, that was last year, but uh, I mean, for the longest, at least, especially during that Benzema era, there wasn't really that big signings. Yes, Rodrigo and Vinicius came in, um, but they were fairly cheap when Real Madrid went and got them, and they were guys that they developed into these starting positions. Eden Hazard is probably another name to mention, but um, we know how that panned out for him. Um, so I don't think Real Madrid hasn't really been doing any of those like let's get the world's best player and bring. I mean, besides Kylian Mbappe, but then again, he was free because he was a free transfer, and so because his contract ran out with PSG. But I do think that like how this trial ends out for Manchester City will dictate how clubs handle business from here on out. And I think that for me, of all things, is going to be important on how they punish if they find Manchester City guilty of violating from those 115 charges. How many did they? How many? One, how many of those charges does the court feel they have violated? And then secondly, what is the punishment that's given to them? Is it point deductions? Is it relegation? What is it that's gonna put Man City? How they're gonna punish Manchester City and put the rest of the world of football on high alert on, hey, we cannot conduct business like this anymore. We need to start finding a new way on acquiring players, or we have to now, cross our T's and dot our I's when we conduct business for players, for player acquisitions. And I think that that's important. I think that especially the way it's been now, right? Because now we have these 200 million signings. These, we're gonna have a player that's gonna be worth 300 mil. We're gonna have a player that's gonna be a $300 million signing. Could be Lamine Yamal, but it's gonna happen one day. And when that happens, you're gonna have to make sure that everything on the paperwork is is being what is being spent. So yes, clubs in general should be on high alert on how they acquire players in general. But if Manchester City gets hit with a hard punishment, what that is, I have no idea. I would love it to be points deducted on the seasons that they felt were very much in violation of those charges. I would love. I don't want to see them get relegated. In my opinion, I don't. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I don't want to see Manchester City get relegated. I don't think that maybe that's a little too harsh. I know some people might say that's not harsh enough, like send them down to League Two, but I don't know. Relegating them is to me a little tricky. I don't think that that's the way to go. I do think the point deductions for the years that they were very much guilty of, and if it involves uh you know transferring of awards, you're taking away their legacy, which that's gonna hurt Man City fans because their legacy is very recent, and so that's gonna hurt them. I think I think hitting a transfer ban would be significant to me. So for me, okay, so if I get to decide if I feel for a fact that Manchester City is guilty of the 115 charges of financial fair play accusations that they have, I'm doing point deductions on the years that were very involved with those charges. If that means however many points that we end up giving away is if it's enough for them to lose that title that year, transfer over to that team, I think it's warranted. I think they need to have a transfer ban of 4 windows. That's 2 years of transfers that I think that they need to be banned from. Um, I think that's really all I would say. I mean, if possible, I would love to put a cap on them on a transfer cap, but I don't know. I think that would probably be a little bit too much, or probably be hard to be able to uh figure out how the logistics of all that. But I do think point deductions, and I do think a transfer ban of an enforced transfer ban, not here, let's lift this transfer ban up so you can go ahead and get Lamine Yamal. No, like no, you're not getting anybody this offseason. You're not getting anybody this transfer window. You're not getting anybody this transfer window. You're not gonna get anybody in this transfer window. That's 2 years worth of transfers that they're not gonna be able to have. That's gonna be them having to look into their academy, which I'm sure isn't that bad of an academy, especially when you're seeing like some of the academy players are coming out of Manchester City. But not enough, like they still have a very much loaded team. Like they're still gonna go out there and compete. I'm not even trying to ban them from Champions League. Like that, I'm not even doing that. I'm just gonna put them in a position where they just are gonna be hurt for a little bit, take away some of their legacy away, um, and and hope that is enough for clubs to realize like, hey, let's start making sure these numbers add up. Let's make sure that we're paying this player what we say we're gonna pay him. And I think that's how like I said, if you can do a punishment enough to get teams to understand that this is not tolerable, that you're not going to get a slap on the wrist, that we are going to put a transfer ban on you and not quickly lift it up just for a bit, just so you can acquire this one player. That it's like, nope, work with what you have on your roster. I think that's it's fair to say. I think that maybe that could at least change how business is conducted in football because it's still a problem in this game of how players are being acquired, that teams aren't being fully honest on how players are being acquired. And so I think that needs to be addressed and it needs to be fixed quickly.